Yeah, when I first moved to LA, Tower Records was the spot on Sunset Boulevard. And even when I first went in there as a customer, Sherman Hemsley, George Jefferson was in there shopping, you know, and the guy from the Knack was in there, the singer from the Knack was shopping. So it was just a place that everybody went to, and you would see celebrities and musicians there or whatever. And when I went to give my application in for the job, I was told to go see the manager in the back, and I was standing there waiting for the manager, and someone came up next to me, and it was Elton John, and I said hello to Elton John, and he was like, "Oh, hi," because he had an account with the store where he could get whatever he wanted anytime and pay later, you know, because he was such a music nut. So I was like, man, this is the place for me, you know. So one day I'm just working behind the cassette counter, and I see this guy stroll through the door, and he just looked so strange that my first impression was just like, that guy. And my eyes were being opened because I came from Delaware, you know, so I came to Hollywood, and, you know, first time I saw prostitutes and, you know, just the whole deal was just like, wow, this town is a trip, you know. So there were always characters coming through the door at that place, you know, just strange characters. So this guy had a baseball hat with a huge afro and, you know, a little mustache, buck teeth. There were other times when he would have a kind of like a Groucho Marx kind of nose just stuck on, you know. He would just be completely outlandish to just look ridiculous. Really thrift store clothes, like really bad sweaters with bad colored slacks or whatever, you know. And then I guess there was a point too where I noticed that there was a couple kids running up to him and talking to him too. And then I was just kind of looking down the aisle, and it just kind of hit me, and I was like, no way. So I kind of walked around, and Larry was my friend, and I said, you know, I call me crazy, but I think that guy back there is Michael Jackson. And he looked at me, he said, man, shut up, and just kind of walked away. And as he walked away, he turned back around and said, it is. And then I was like, you know, because I kind of felt like, wow, I figured it out too. But I just started talking to him, and I said, do you need some help? And he was like, yeah, I'm looking for Boston, and I need Steely Dan. And there was all these, like, you know, he's throwing out all these crazy things that you even wouldn't expect him to buy. So I started grabbing everything, and I was pretty familiar with the store at the time, and got a cart for him and started throwing everything in the thing. And before long, he had a big stack of stuff, and there was a line in the front of the store, and I just told him, you can come in the back, and I'll, you know, write everything down, ring you up, and take care of you, and blah, blah, blah. And we went in the back room where the security was, and he saw the one-way security mirror, and he was like, wow, so they can't see you, but you can see them? And I was like, yeah. And he's like, I never get to watch people shop. Can I just watch people for a while? And he, you know, sat there for 10 minutes just like scoping out the store and checking people out. I guess it's a weird thing because, you know, for the first time, nobody's looking at him, you know. And I remember too, like when he would come in the back room, he would kind of de-dress a little. He would take the teeth out and, you know, take a few things off to make himself a little more comfortable so it wasn't so ridiculous. But after that visit, you know, I took him out to his car, and then it kind of, you know, I would get a phone call. Jim, line 2, you know, hey, it's Michael. And I'd be like, oh, hey. And he's like, are you going to be in? I'm coming in today. And like, man, he would pick like Saturday afternoon, I'm coming in today. And it would be like the busiest day, you know. So I remember a few Saturdays of like staying close, and he would be talking, you know, to me like this. And I worked at that tower for a little over a year, and I think it was 8 times that he came in. I would write it down each time, you know. So someone called me from the Sherman Oaks store and said, if you want to come to this tower, you can be a manager. You've been there long enough and you're doing a good job or whatever. And I was like, but at Sherman Oaks, you know, I'm going to lose the Hollywood thing or whatever. But okay, I'll do it. More money too, you know. still working in a record shop, and it wasn't what I wanted to do. I was still trying to work on music, so still tried to keep that secondary. But at some point, a girl from Tower Sunset called me at Sherman Oaks and said, Michael Jackson just called. He wanted to know if you were going to be there, and I told him you don't work there anymore. And I was like, okay, thanks. I'll probably never see him again. A few days later, whatever, someone came in and said that Michael Jackson's at the toy store across the street. And that was the only time that I saw him as Michael Jackson without the costume. He had bodyguards that day, and he was shopping at this toy store. And he was full on, Michael Jackson clothes and everything. So I walked across the street and ran into him as he was coming out with the security guards. And he totally was like, oh, hey. And I was like, hey. And he said, what happened to you? And I said, I moved to this tower. I'm working there. It's a really good shop. You should come over. And he's like, I will. And he came to the shop the next day. And I was working upstairs, and someone called, and Michael Jackson's downstairs. I met him one other time on Hollywood Boulevard, just ran into him by chance with walking down the street with a family. I saw this guy in a burqa with his whole body covered except for this much of his face, and walking with a family, and I saw his eyes, and I told my buddy, like, that's Michael Jackson. He's like, no way. And I said, well, I should just go say hi, because at that point it had been maybe a couple years since I left Tower, and that's when I had started the band. So I just decided to walk up to him one more time, and I walked beside him, and I said, Michael? And he squinted his eyes, and he turned, and he looked at me, and then recognized me. I said, it's Jim from Tower, and he kind of like sighed of relief, and he said, promise not to tell a soul. And I said, I won't tell anybody. And he took me in the corner of the Guinness World Record Museum there on Hollywood Boulevard, and kind of told the family, like, oh, I know this guy, I'm just going to talk for a second, I'll be right there. And the family, like, it was like a mom and a daughter and like 2 sons, I think. And he was just treating them, that's just the kind of person that he was. And I saw that all those times, I saw that it was just, he was fortunate for what he had, and I know that he was just like, you guys, let's have a field day. We're at Tower Records right now. Get whatever you want. And that's what he was doing with those guys in Hollywood, too. They were just checking out the sites. But we caught up for a few minutes, and Dangerous had been out at that time, and I told him that I loved that album. And I went to see him film the MTV 10th anniversary thing. And that shows you how long it's been. It's MTV 10th anniversary. And, just talked for a few minutes. And I always wondered, will I ever run into that guy again, And obviously, as times went on and, all the crazy stuff had happened, he kind of disappeared. He lived in Vegas. I would hear, he's living in Vegas, or he's living in some weird country or whatever, But there was always still that maybe I'll run into him one day. So then when I found out that he died, it really hit me, not only as like being a fan or whatever, just like, that was a special thing that just kind of happened. I was lucky that I experienced that, and sometimes I felt like I was almost making it up because it just seemed so weird, and then, after he died, and I would talk to some of my friends from Tower Records, and they would say like, you were like his guy that he went to, and, because because I never consider myself like a friend or whatever. It's just, but, he knew my name, and he, like, looked for me, so, Unfortunately, I never ran into him again after that, it would have been great to, see him again and say, come to see my band we're playing at El Rey, you know what I mean?
I had to go a little Ornette Coleman on that bridge.